The Constitutional Court has ruled in favor of the Bromwell families following an 8-year legal battle with the city of Cape Town. Yesterday, the court ruled that the city's emergency housing plan is unfair and unconstitutional. It also found the city has not done enough to fix the damage caused by apartheid, where people were living very far from the city centre. Now, the city has now been ordered to provide temporary housing for families in areas like Woodstock and Salt River and cannot evict them until this is done. The family's legal representative, Disha Govender, says the decision is not a victory for the families involved, but a victory for everyone that is fighting for fair access to land and housing in South Africa. Now, for some reaction to that judgment, let's speak to Siyabulela Mama, who's the spokesperson of the Assembly for the Unemployed. Siyabulela, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Maybe let's perhaps start with you just sharing the personal experiences of the members of Assembly of the Unemployed, especially during the legal battle, and how it's affected that community.
So thank you so much for having me. And look, I think for us, what's important for this is it paints a picture of how not only the city of Cape Town, by the way, although this is mostly we see it in the Siyabulela house where people are occupying hospitals. We see it in Inklung, in Khayelitsha, where people are occupying vacant land, and what red ants are doing to them without any form of alternative housing. And we see this, by the way, happening in Durban, in eThekwini, with the struggles of abahlali basemjondolo. And important in understanding this is who is doing this and why they're doing this. And the people who are doing this are unemployed people, poor working class people, who, by the way, are trying to find a place to stay. And in some efforts have been living in places and are now being evicted. And we must also understand then what informs this. And this is a historical crisis of what land dispossession has done, what the migrant labor system has done, what past laws have done in creating this landless, dispossessed proletariat. And it's this legacy of spatial apartheid and the Group Areas Act in which we find ourselves in this condition. And this is quite a manifestation of this fact. And this is why we welcome this judgment, because it doesn't mean it means a lot, not only for the Bromwell families if the Bromwell families in Bromwell Street in Cape Town, but the broader working class struggle for housing and land in South Africa.
So when we hone back to Cape Town, I mean, the Constitutional Court found that ultimately, among other things, the city had unreasonably failed to adopt its own temporary emergency accommodation policy that's to be implemented in conjunction with the National Emergency Housing Program. And this was the compounding legacy, like you've also stated, of spatial apartheid. What impact would this temporary emergency accommodation policy have had if implemented right on your community, for instance? How far would they be with regards to their housing issues?
Look, another thing that we also need to understand is how municipalities operate and how municipalities also deem poor people. And what does this mean in terms of rates and rate collection? And in essence, the municipal finance model in itself. So how would municipalities relate to poor people, and in this case, how they wanted to move the people in Bromwell Street to Khayelitsha and in informal settlements away from the city center, also sends a typical message that We need to understand. And what this then means, that you must move people within the vicinity of Woodstock, and you must not move them in a dump somewhere in the periphery of Cape Town. You must move them where they closer to work, where they can access services easily, where people can walk to places where they can look for work on the case of unemployed people. So this says a lot about the racism that South Africans have. Poor South Africans are currently sitting in, and this is quite a very interesting crisis, because I'm thinking on many fronts. What's happening in Durban with Abahlali Basemjondolo,
Right.
what's happening in Gauteng with the Gauteng Housing Crisis Committee. So this is beyond Cape Town as well, and yeah,
It
quite
certainly
exciting.
is. Well, just in closing and moving forward in terms of this conversation, Minister Simelane, who is the Minister in Human Settlements, has welcomed the Constitutional Court judgment, saying that her department is currently studying the judgment and they will be working together with the Departments of Human Settlements in the Western Cape and the City of Cape Town. How do you, as the Assembly of Unemployed, plan then to collaborate with these departments in ensuring that justice is then served for all of these residents?
So I made a point earlier around how this is a historical crisis, okay? And now when you look at, if you look at how townships are built, they build on a historical basis of how apartheid has built our townships in a way that you build them for migrant labor. You get into your house to sleep, and you wake up in the morning to go to work. There's no actual space for gardening. There's no actual space for creating a food garden in your backyard. There's no actual space for and what we're beginning to see is also how people who have occupied houses for themselves are able to have these things. They have to have gardens in their houses and enough space to move around. And if human settlements in itself needs to rethink this crisis, it also needs to rethink how it does the housing model and how it provides housing for poor and working class people as a whole. And
Right.
and this is how we're thinking around approaching this particular issue.
Okay, Siyabulela, thank you so much for your time and for joining us. We certainly hope that this issue will be put to bed and those people are given that decent accommodation. That is Siyabulela Mama from the Assembly of the Unemployed speaking to us there on the back of the Concourt and finding Cape Town's implementation of the housing program unconstitutional.